we still just don't talk about it. Or if we do it from a penalty standpoint. The guy who gets caught in adultery, what do? We kick him out.
Wow.
Well, why the hell we kick him out? Like, he's at his sickest point.
Wow.
He needs to be in care, not kicked out of care. Does he need to be pastoring? Probably not, but he needs to be pastored.
This episode was so impactful for me and Julie because as we talk to our good friends you're going to hear from today, Brett and Emily Mills, we learned so much about those that have been exploited through sex trafficking, how the porn industry feeds into that. And I'm telling you what, it's not only going to open your eyes, it's going to move your heart to want to do something about it. So check out this episode with our friends from Jesus Said Love, Brett and Emily Mills. Hey friends, I'm Chris Bennett and I'm here with my beautiful wife, Julie.
Hey everyone.
Together, we're going to explore the life-changing power of family.
So pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us on Finding Family.
Family, all in this together. Family, we're taking a chance. Family, like birds of a feather. Family, you got my shoes in dance.
All right, well, we are so excited to have some longtime, not old friends, because we're not old, we're young, we're youthful.
We're not.
Right.
But just lifelong friends of ours on the podcast today. Today we're joined with by Brett and Emily Mills, and they lead an incredible organization called Jesus Said Love. We're going to jump into that here in a little bit. Just first, I want to say great to see you guys virtually. It's been a long time since we've seen each other in person, but it's great to see your faces.
I mean, Brett, that beard. If only everyone could see.
And it looks real.
How epic
You
it
want
is.
to touch it, don't you? You just
I
want
really do.
do those little fingers right there.
He's got two good streaks that just
Chris,
front.
do you remember the first time we met?
I remember, I have a memory of meeting. I don't know if it was the first time though. Tell me.
I think this is the first time. This is at least my first memory of when we met.
Ooh.
It was at the Christian radio station in Waco, Texas.
Oh no.
And you were jamming on the one. I believe it was Auntie Benton. And he asked me to come by because of the celebrity that I am in Waco.
Right. Yes. Right.
And sit in on the radio show.
Yes.
And I came and met you.
I remember that now because I know our listener, we were
Did
averaging
anybody
about,
listen to
we were
that?
listening about 10 a week and you came on and it jumped to 15. And we were
And
like,
I got up high.
Crowder, we had Crowder call in a couple times. I mean, we worked every connection we had. So I do remember that. It was the Harvest radio station. And, that's how we were able to move to LA and kind of live the lifestyle we live.
Bringing in the sheaves,
really,
man.
really.
It was well done back then. Well done.
Back then I had my case of CDs and all of my Christian, like my people in my little case. And I'm still sad that I left it there. Chris needed it for a show and I never got it back.
Yeah.
And
hey, crazy thing though.
that's irrelevant, but I'm obviously
very
reliving
relevant.
this moment of sadness. It was pleather, and
where
the
are you,
zipper
Pastor?
was a
We
little
didn't have money for
broken, but it was pretty snazzy.
And we went back and listened to some old
Guys.
radio shows that I'd done, and I sounded like a different human.
Now
I was
he
like,
sounds
hey, y'all,
like
listen.
this, everything.
Have you experienced this in your own life?
Well, they still live there. Maybe they don't. Their voice. Maybe because
No,
we
I
moved,
think
we
I think
changed.
it's something about the youth and the culture that you were just indoctrinated with at
All
the
things, all people.
time, and you just sound like what you're around. You really
Yeah,
do.
there you go.
Well, and the more times you watch and listen to yourself on film or tape, I think you kind of go, do I really sound like that? I need to fix that.
Yes.
It was thick though.
And my
I mean, we
children
went
were
back and
listening.
listened to his first sermon he ever preached. He was like 20. We think we are like changing the world, like, next level. And his sermon, he's talking like this. We're talking thick. And he's like, guys, you will be persecuted.
in Lorena, Texas.
and it's good and it's okay. And I looked at him like, did we think that was a good sermon? Did we think we were, wow.
Well, we couldn't even hear ourselves, really. We couldn't hear ourselves the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
Look at us now, you guys. Look at us now.
Hey, we're seeing
We're still winning. Look.
and truly, Emily, I have an amazing memory of you that I want to share. And I remember it was a song that
It's a
was
great
on.
intro. I'm loving
Was
this.
it called Touchstone? What was it that y'all led worship for? Touchstone at High Hands.
Highland.
yes.
High Hands.
First Baptist Waco was
Okay,
where
that's where it was
Touchstone was
held.
held. Right.
Yeah. And I remember you guys led worship, but I remember it was the song out of Isaiah about soaring on wings as eagles.
Oh.
It was the Isaiah song.
Soaring wings as eagles, I will run and not grow faint when I look to you. May the glory of your light shine on me.
Her albums are for sale.
Hey, I'm serious though.
I remember that song. I remember the lyrics to that song. I'm not just saying this. I thought
that is one of the girl we were singing it with. It could have been, I could have sang it after she left, but her name is Bethany Logston. She's now Bethany Neff, and she lives in Nashville with her producer husband. And she sang on several Praise Babies, but that was like the first song that she wrote and that we sang at Touchstone. And it became a favorite.
Wow. Brett, did you have something you were about to say? You're on the edge of your seat.
I was going to give Bethany credit if Emily didn't.
Oh, okay.
Don't you worry.
Well, thank you, Bethany.
I always know where to give the cred.
Just making sure, because I think Bethany listens to your podcast weekly. And so I want to make sure that she gets the shout out.
And the money and the royalties. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you guys. We just need to get together in person is what needs to happen, and we need to hang. But for the sake of our time today, I would love for you to tell our listeners just a little bit about you guys, and then really what Jesus said love is all about.
You want me to go, babe? I guess it all kind of started.
I would love for you to go, because I would love to follow you and color up what you didn't include.
Yeah. So, as we've already mentioned, we have known each other for a long time. So Brett and I are married. We want to say that we are married. We have 3 kids. We live in Waco, Texas. We are graduates of Baylor University. And we got to know ministry. I got to know ministry world there. I was a ministry guidance student at Baylor. I was a really good Baptist. Just that's my context. And so when I met Brett, it was through a worship ministry, and we began singing together. We fell in love and then got married. And in 2004, after we'd had our first baby, we ended up in Austin, Texas, leading worship for a women's conference. And I really thought I knew what women's conferences were kind of all about. Like, been around the block. Like, I knew a few door prizes. We're going to have some lunch. What I didn't know is that the main focus of this was reaching women in the commercial sex industry. And so about 4 women took the stage and shared their stories, how their lives had just been radically changed by the kindness that women had offered them in strip clubs and on the streets who were in prostitution. And at that time, I'd never heard of anything like this. I heard in all of their stories a thread of childhood sexual abuse, and that was part of my story that I was aware of at the time. And I just was so curious. It unlocked this curiosity in me and a real calling to want to know her. And the only way to know her was to go to the strip clubs. And so, we began strip club outreaches in 2004 in Waco, Texas. By 2009, we had grown across the state. 2014, we were in 7 Texas cities, reaching about 1,000 women every month, just with kindness and gift bags. And we learned, of course, about the human trafficking crisis as well. The problem with just solely an outreach model was that it really wasn't providing any transformation, any opportunities for a way out. It was just saying, hey, we love you. How can we serve you? It's like, are you going to pay my light bill? Like, I don't want to be here. 89% of women in the sex industry don't want to be there. And so we then decided in 2016, we were gifted a building in Waco, Texas. So you can come by and see us at 15th and Columbus. And we decided we would start building programs. We would scale back on outreaches. We would just focus on Central Texas. And so now we do job training. We give livable wage jobs through a social enterprise called Lovely. We provide drop-in services and case management. And we do education and prevention through Brett's amazing Stop Demand School, where he works with offenders and also trains other men in churches and organizations what this issue is and why buying sex is really harmful.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Casual,
Yeah.
How are you going to color that up, Brett?
Color it in.
Like your beard.
Really hit that out of the park. I'm not going to touch that. That was absolutely brilliant, babe.
I think it was the hot yoga this morning. I think the blood is like flowing this morning. And so something about the heat got my mouth moving the right way.
There was no ums in that. That was That was awesome.
Yeah,
That was pro. That was pro. I mean, your mic may be missing a screw, but you're not.
You guys are
Castelaw
microphone.
would be proud of you right now.
Yes. Castelaw Communications. Shout it out.
Another shout out. So Brett, tell me about the Stop Demand School she mentioned.
Yes, I want to hear about that.
Well, that was an interruption in the plan as well. That wasn't in the business model. Of course, none of this was. We're musicians, for crying out loud, and all of a sudden now we're doing this. But Emily came back to the office one day and she said she'd been at a meeting of community leaders that was kind of focused on human trafficking. And we had been put on a subcommittee that was focused on prevention efforts. And she came back and said, well, I signed us up for something and you're going to lead it. And I said, okay, what is that? She said, you're going to create a diversion program for offenders. And I was like, what? You want me to do what? And I'm glad that she did that. At first I was like, what in the world? But now I'm glad, because it is, it in and of itself, in addition to all the other things that we do, has transformed my life. And so what we did was we created a program for buyers when they get busted. Most of them, part of their restitution is they have to take our class. It's a privilege, I'm not going to lie. It for many of them, they get their charges reduced or wiped off their record, but we get a chance to sit in the room with them for 8 hours on a Tuesday and talk very candidly and frankly about all of these issues of what they had participated in. And at first, the very first class I went to, I thought to myself, these are just a bunch of scumbags. Like who buys sex? Like, right. At least go have a drink at a bar and meet somebody and go home. I mean, there's free options out there. Like, why do you feel like you have to buy it? And I tell you what broke off in me was there was a guy there I knew his charge, and part of the curriculum at the very beginning is you have to tell your story. And so I said, why are you here? And he was hawing around. And I knew that he had attempted to buy a 16-year-old. Now, thank God, as a sheriff's officer, but his attempt was a 16-year-old, and he was a 50-something-year-old man. And now I have a 16-year-old daughter at the time. So I have anger in my heart towards this person. And I'm trying to verbally beat him up and blah, blah, blah. But I kept hearing this little voice that some of us call the Holy Spirit say, ask him the last time he was happy. And I'm like, I'm not asking this guy that. I mean, this is sex buying. We don't ask people when they're happy and sex buying. And so I'm just hounding him some more. And the Holy Spirit kept saying, ask him the last time he's happy. I was like, fine. When was the last time you were happy? And he starts crying. And I'm like, wait, there's no crying in sex buying. Get yourself together, man. And he said, well, my wife and I don't sleep in the same bed anymore. She takes care of her invalid parents. I get no attention. I said, okay, when was the last time you were happy? And he said, when I met my wife. And I said, when was that? And he said, when we were 16. And so for me, the empathy finally broke off of, okay, he's not a scumbag. Now, this doesn't excuse his behavior by any means, like lock him up, right? But my point is, for me personally, it gave me a heart of, okay, in the same way the seller has a story of trauma, the buyer has a story of trauma as well that brought them to that place. And so it's been a beautiful, difficult, but really beautiful thing to see both these areas overlap in a lot of restoration as well.
It's incredible. I mean, when I saw that you guys were doing that, I mean, that was one of the most impactful things for me. Just looking at the ministry that you guys are doing, I'm like, that right there. Because we talk a lot about the one that was offended, the one that was trafficked, all that, and rightly so. But that is really, I mean, Jesus said love. Hello. He's not going after one side. He's going after all sides. He's going after the broad spectrum of pain and trauma. And that's what he does. So to see you guys, you're way to go.
Well, probably one of the coolest things that you're talking about, forgiveness and reconciliation, probably the coolest thing that surprised us, I guess, in this work is we have survivors who we use restorative justice principles, and survivors come and share their story of harm to those who would have offended them. And it is such an act of courage. And this was survivor prompted. And they said, if if there's hope for my life, they said, I want these guys to know if there's hope for me, there's hope for them. And so we're like, okay, if a survivor is saying that and they've been directly harmed by these guys, then we, as the quote, have it all together, churchgoer, we need to have a space also of empathy, which leads to a greater understanding of human connection and kindred family, which is what your podcast is about. I mean, we've really, Father Gregory Boyle, who runs Homeboy Industries in LA, we love him and the work that they're doing. And he talks about in his book, Tattoos on the Heart. He talks about radical kinship and really finding this place of radical kinship with the people who you don't think is like you. Another author that I love and learn from is Henry Nouwen.
Yes, love Henry Nouwen.
I read him every day.
I know. Life of the Beloved is so good. And he has this book called Reaching Out that talks about the 3 moves of the spiritual life. And one of them is transforming places of hostility to hospitality.
Ooh.
And so it really is about what biases, what places in my heart are hostile toward other people or toward other countries or toward other spaces. And how can I transform my heart and my home and my life into a place of hospitality? Because that is the true work of the Spirit.
Well, I have a question on that. And I think, you guys having been in vocational type ministry as we were for years. And then even for us, when we got to LA, being in a very different culture, being around very different type of people and realizing, there's so many religious things in us that, and not when we say religion, that's not good or bad. It's just things in us that's like, okay, why do we think that? Why do we believe that? Why do we treat people like this a certain way? And I would love to hear what that's been like for you guys in undoing some of the maybe Brett, you kind of hit on it, but as you're meeting people that, how have you guys been able to sift through? How do you just love people without getting in the way of the religious barriers that sometimes get there? Does he understand what I'm asking? Because I think that's what we're constantly asking.
Yeah. I mean, well, gosh, I guess the short answer is it's hard and it's easy, right? I mean, it's hard in the sense that it's like getting, how do I say this? To get your average church person who's never been outside of the pew to see that a man who attempted to buy sex is even worth sucking oxygen on the planet, to get them to see that person as a person is like pulling teeth. But in the same way, they will have the utmost compassion for the dancer or the desirous woman caught in lust. And it's such an interesting, when we look at the life of Jesus, he doesn't play any favorites of either side of the equation. He says, you're all worthy of me. And so let's get me to all of you. And so I don't know why something about the church and I have been coming down on the church hard lately on this particular issue, because we don't talk about sex. And if we do, it's in such a ice house, perfect, the way that we grew up, this true love waits nonsense that now people are in therapy over. We've just done it wrong. And so we're seeing the effects of that. And so, but instead of seeing the effects of that and going, man, we screwed that up in the 80s and the 90s, let's repent of that and let's do something different. We still just don't talk about it. Or if we do it from a penalty standpoint. The guy who gets caught in adultery, what do? We kick him out.
Wow.
Well, why the hell we kick him out? Like, he's at his sickest point.
Wow. He
needs to be in care, not kicked out of care. Right. Does he need to be pastoring? Probably not, but he needs to be pastored. Yeah. And so I don't know. The more I read the red letters, the more I see we're all welcome. We're all welcome there in the midst, not getting fixed, but in the midst of our whatever we're in. And we're all in something.
Yes.
And if you think you're not in something, it's going to rear its ugly head when you least expect it, because we're all in something. And at that point is when we need to have someone who's there ready to accept us. So whatever you can extract out of that.
Come on, that's so good, Brett.
You don't choose them, can't lose them.
I remember when our kids were young that some of the biggest challenges Julie and I faced consistently was coming up with healthy habits and routines in the morning and the evening so that we could really be connected as a family. And that's why we're so excited to partner with our friends at Loam. Loam is a digital platform. It helps your family get into healthy routines. And they are sponsoring this episode. And what they're offering to our Finding Family listeners, if you go to withloam.com/findingfamily and enter in the code Finding Family, you're gonna get a month free. And on there, you're gonna find examples of things you can do around mealtime, around the table. Just basically, how do you get connected in a healthy way as a family? And another way you can help support the show and be more connected to the Finding Family community is join our Patreon group. You'll receive bonus interviews, exclusive content, a monthly Q&A with me and Julie, and lots more. So check us out on Patreon.
Have y'all felt the opposition of that, your message?
Yeah, and here's the real conundrum for us is we have so much bias and hatred in our own hearts, and all of that comes from our wounding. We are so far east of Eden, as Dr. Allender says. We are out of the garden, and there's no way on this earth to fully return, right? That's for heaven. That's our final resting place. But we have this desire for it because we're from it. We're from wholeness. The problem is in the church, we promote this idea of love. And then at the same time, we drink that cup. We drink the cup in the Lord's Supper. If you think about the sacraments, what we're saying in that is we need this. There's something in us that is needy and that is broken. And yet, how could we drink that cup and refuse to love? How do we do that? Well, it's because we really don't want to see how we've been offended and how we've been harmed and we've been hurt. So we cut off those hard, hurtful wounds so that we can act like the savior to the victim.
And I think not getting fit. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
When you saying not getting fixed, that whole, I think about, for people that have pastored a church for a long time, for a decade, did ministry before that, youth ministry, college ministry, all the things, that I see the biggest thing with the church stepping out of the specific roles we were in. We need to feel better about our wounds. So we're trying to be the hero so that doesn't allow the space for people to be loved as we see Jesus doing. Plain and simple. So, anyway, go ahead, Brett.
Well, practically speaking, yes, we get pushback. Yes, we have people that say, how could you, I don't know how you can do that. I'm glad that's you. And I'm like, but that's you too, bro. Scripture says, you see a brother in need, you don't know anything about it. How dwells the love of God in you, right? So we've got some people over here in need and you're turning your nose up to them. How's the love in you? Is it there? Is it not there? Is it just for certain people? Well, you're missing the boat. Well, Brett, you're being judgmental. No, just reading the word. That's what it said. So whatever, do with it what you want. But here recently, I will say, so we've been at this since 2004. Up until this year, we haven't gotten a lot of pushback on certain areas, but now we are starting to get pushback. And it's really interesting. I don't know if it's the culture that we live in. I don't know if it's the different political teams that people have chosen to align with. But now we get questions like, well, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on that? And you need to make a statement about this. And we're like, we don't make statements. Our statement is Jesus said love. That is our statement.
Yes.
That's our position. So
good.
Put that over whatever political thing you need to put it over. That's what it is.
That's what it is. I want to go back to, this might be a hot topic in the church. I don't know, but I like hot topics. You talked about, now I'm
sorry.
I'm derailed. What was I saying? It was going to be a real good, life-changing question I was about to ask.
This is a hot topic. So
Nope. Don't know. Ooh. Maybe it's a sign. No. Definitely don't want to talk about politics. What do I want to talk? Oh, I don't know, the True Love Waits. No, you didn't say True Love Waits. True Love Waits, purity culture. How do you see that? Because I have a feeling people are going to hear that and be like, wait, what do you mean exactly? And I think it's important. I have teenage boys. I'm not going to go off on the things that, I'm going to not even finish that thought, but I would love.
Over the negative impact.
Yeah. Like, what do you think? I'm curious, what in your opinion? Because I think
I'll share my story.
And what is that? Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I fell in love with Emily Mills. This story right here.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up in Tyler, Texas, going to a mega church, mega Baptist church. And my youth group during the purity movement, purity culture, which was, a move of abstinence to not have any sex or masturbate before marriage. So it was all encompassing, like any kind of pleasure, don't do it. And this was before even the I Kiss Dating Goodbye stuff. So my youth group decides that we want to be represented in Washington to push forward this abstinence bill so that abstinence curriculum is taught across Texas. So every single person in the youth group had to sign a document that says, I will not have sex until I'm married. And
I signed it.
And I would not sign it. Now, the interesting part of this is that I didn't have a boyfriend. I wasn't even having sex. I was just floored. I was so curious. I was like, why do they care? Like, I'm not understanding how this little card carries that much weight for me to not have sex with my body. I could not fathom it. So I didn't sign it. So then the youth pastor calls my dad and I have to have this conversation with two grown men about why I didn't think they needed to care and that a card couldn't keep me from having sex. And I also thought it was weird that so many men were so concerned about their daughters' vaginas. And I just was like, why are you thinking about my body like that? And where did it become, and this is when I'm in high school. Like, I don't really have any theology training. I have no understanding of the Reformation or oppression or patriarchy. I didn't even know any of that.
They're just sign the card. Okay.
They're just sign the card and shut up. Just do it. So our name, so our church can look good.
Right.
And I didn't like that. I was like, no, I just don't like that. So I didn't sign it. But I did practice abstinence. That was the irony of it, is I just didn't want to sign it, but I valued abstinence. I think, and honestly, here's the upside of it is I am thankful because I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. There was something about the church and that rule that did keep me from re-traumatizing myself over and over and over. Because I know I could have gone a different way. And I'm not saying the church was able to do that for everyone, right? Sure. I know I'm not judging anyone who went the other route into extreme promiscuity or whatever. But for me, there is goodness in it. So I rail hard on it, but I also value the good that came out of it.
That's powerful.
Very powerful. What? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think I want to go back to, these last few minutes that we have. I know there's a lot of ground that we could cover, but, we're talking about.
You don't want to talk about True Love Waits, Chris?
I still have the ring. I'm pretty sure I still have the ring.
Oh, you signed the card and got the ring.
Oh, I did. I was a better Baptist than you, Emily, is the bottom line.
I have a feeling I'm getting a lot of questions about this, but I don't mind that. I just think it's a great conversation, which might be another podcast another time, but just keep going.
No, I think I would love to just hear, because statistics are overwhelming. On y'all's website, we'll put the link in there. People can look at the statistics from pornography and how much that drives a lot of the industry and whatnot, and talking about the church and even the religious ways is a lot of times only dealing with behavior, and kind of we become the behavior police, and instead of getting to the root issues, and what would you guys say? I mean, the people that you've worked with, from the men and the women, I know you touched on a little bit, but what are the root issues that to see something systemically change and that have to be dealt with?
I would answer that with communication. if we, Emily uses this phrase a lot, let's go back upstream. I think if we go back upstream on a lot of this, a lot of it is we don't communicate. We don't talk to our kids. If we do, we talk to our kids weirdly, and we talk about, don't touch your pee-pee, and you use weird language like that.
It's shame.
It's a penis is what it is.
Right.
And you're going to feel feelings that you naturally want to, because God made you that way.
Right.
And so instead of saying, don't flog the dolphin, we talk about what are the positive. That's where I disagree with Triple X Church on some things and how they teach certain things. It's shame-based versus let's begin early on with our kids, with youth group, with whatever, and talk about, hey, you know what? God made your body and he made it beautiful, and he made sex, and your body's going to go through changes. You're going to feel things, and all of those are good. So we have to start from a place of goodness,
not shame,
and not shame. But what we've done is we've done the shame thing. Don't do it. Well, why? I feel like I want to do this. God said it was good. Don't do it. If you do it, then you can't be in leadership, or, you can't do this or that. And it's like, so then I'm going to go do it quietly. And so now what we see is sex buyers who are addicted to porn. 99% have a porn addiction. And if I asked individually, where did it start? It's going to go back to their childhood. Average age of watching porn is now 8 years old. So porn, I think, is one of the biggest influences now, but parents put their heads in the sand, or the dad's watching porn himself. So he didn't even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so now
and again, it's about shame. It's about exposure. It's about our wounds. And there's a great book called Unwanted by a researcher and therapist named Jay Stringer. He lives in New York now. He was with the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology, but he studied over 200 sex buyers and then worked largely around the issue of pornography addiction. And he says the type of sexual intimacy or fantasies or unwanted deviant sexual behaviors that we want actually reveal our truest need for healing. And so we're not off. We don't even know. The church doesn't even know how to go there. And so some of this for our awakening has just been about being trauma informed and really making space for the wound and making space for the normalcy of trauma. All of us have had that fallout.
Okay. So I would love to ask you guys about what does it look like to have conversations with your kids, with your teenagers, before they're teenagers?
The right age.
The right age. That doesn't bring shame, but it's good communication. I mean, that's our highest priority. We've done a lot of things wrong. We've figured out how to do some things right, especially with our teenage boys. And it kind of goes back a little bit to the true love waits thing that, the topic that we were discussing a little bit, because, it's like I signed something. Nobody, I just felt like crap. Like, okay, great, but I've already done this or been there or feel this way. So, I'm going to try and love God, hide this, move on. I'm also, I have sexual abuse in my young childhood, same thing. And nobody taught me what I was fighting for in the right way and helped me understand that. It was just, don't do this. So I don't know, just in terms of communication without shame.
I'm so glad you asked that. I actually just wrote a guide called How to Talk Trafficking with Your Kids.
Oh, fantastic.
And because that's probably our number one question is, you guys have been doing this work since Hattie was 1. And so she grew up in our home, and mom and dad are wearing Jesus Loves Stripper shirts at one point, like, hey mom, what's a stripper? So she had a lot of questions about sex work, about, all the things. And so our posture has been one of like a guided exposure. And so we kind of use that framework that we don't want to just shelter our kids from the world, because hello, you can't. You also can't 100% prevent, because trafficking is about traffickers. So you can't, even if you're doing everything right, children are still at risk. And that's on the demand side, right? But what you can do is you can help bolster connection, attachment, compassion, and conversation. And so if you can bolster those things within your family unit, it helps dialogue come out. Like when they do get scared, like one of our kids came home from school when they were in the 5th grade and said, "Hey mom, what's Pornhub?" Well, I was like, 5th grade. And so I'm like, well, yeah. So I said, well, it's a website. Well, I know that, but like, does that mean pornography? What is that about? And so days later, I found out that my child had gone and clicked on that. And we didn't have a filter set up in the right way. It was a huge learning curve for us because here we were fighting this issue.
Yes.
And it had come right to their doorstep. And so really for me, it was about attuning to what that child needed in that moment and saying, what did you see? Did it scare you? Did you like it? Were you curious? Did you click on other things that you thought might be kind of interesting or fun? And it really gave our kid a chance to be open with us because they weren't ashamed. They were safe. And so I'm not terrified. I think we as parents get hypervigilant again over our own trauma, over our
100%.
own wounds. And so I know that if we can normalize conversations when they bring up, I think that guy is so cute. And one of our kids, I remember them saying like, I just want to get a kiss this year. And like they were teenagers and I was like, oh yeah. What does that mean? Like, what would that do for you?
Instead of feeling bad for having that thought, but the fact that he could even say that to you though is beautiful.
Of course you do. Of course you want that.
It'd be weird if you
want
didn't.
A kiss.
You didn't want that when you were 9, but now that you're however old, you want that.
So good.
I get it. I want one too. Where's your mom?
Yep.
So yeah, I think we're trying to normalize connection, eating meals together where conversations around the good, the bad, the hard are normalized. And that helps the conversations around quote uncomfortable things like sex. Sorry, those are dogs. Come here, Bear.
Let the dogs out. Who? Ridiculous on my part.
This is an editing nightmare.
This is an editing
Sorry
nightmare.
to Will, our editor. Well, hey, I think we should probably do a part 2, and I mean that sincerely. I think where we could unpack some of this a little bit more, but we'll end this portion of the conversation because I think we've covered a lot.
Keep going. I have like 2 more questions.
Yeah, I just want we want to get behind you guys. What's the best way our listeners can follow and support what you guys are doing?
Well, guys, first of all, thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure being on here. It's been a pleasure seeing your beautiful faces. You can go to JesusSaidLove.com. You can find us on all the socials at Jesus Said, not says, Jesus Said in the past, present, but past. Jesus Said Love. And then our Justice Enterprise Lovely, you can go shop there at Our Lovely Store.
Yeah, we'll include a link.
And then if people want to hear the conversation you and I had, 20 years ago, Brett, how do we get that out of the archive? I mean,
those were on 2-inch tapes, weren't they? I don't even know what the recording mechanism was. That actually radio station is no longer in business.
Oh, well, after I left, I think it just kind of all went.
You just really took
They ran
the
out of
wind
my
with you on that.
CDs. Play. You have a great radio voice, though, Brett. I'm just saying.
You do, actually.
Fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you.
You should.
You should start a podcast.
You should start a podcast.
Babe, let's start a podcast.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
Maybe
we'll
we'll
check
put
out
that
the
on the
podcast. Yes.
What if we get on it right after
maybe
this?
you guys could be our first guests.
Could you? Would y'all be our guests?
We'll pray about it.
Okay.
I don't feel a lot of peace about it, but I'm open.
If you have a writer or whatever, just send it our way.
Oh, we do. Oh, we do.
Oh gosh, that's awesome.
All
Well,
right,
thank you guys
we
so
love you
much.
guys.
You guys are amazing.
Love you guys.
We'll talk soon.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening today. The best way you can help us get this message of family out to the world is by taking a minute to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and please share. You can also visit our site, findingfamilypodcast.com, and follow us on Instagram to stay connected.
And one more thing. I mean, have you ever listened to an episode and found yourself wanting to hear more from our guests, or thought, man, I'd sure love to get more connected with Chris and Julie? I know you have. If so, you can become a member of our Finding Family Patreon and receive exclusive content and ways to interact with us and our community. Just go to findingfamilypodcast.com and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors at Loam. You can learn more by going to withloam.com/findingfamily.
This episode was produced by Dave Hanso and edited by Will Cotterall and is a production of Welcome Home Entertainment. Original music written and performed by Drew Holcomb.